Do some cultures really have hundreds of words for snow?
Why don't meteorologists study meteors?
And who was the first to take a rain check?
Whether your weather is cold or whether your weather is hot, we'll word together whatever the weather, whether you like it or not, on this episode of Words Unravelled.
Welcome to another Words Unravelled. I'm Rob Watts from the YouTube channel Rob Words.
And I'm Jess Ferris, author of the etymology book, Useless Etymology. And today we are waxing meteorologic on this weather-themed edition of Words Unravelled, which I'm very excited about. It's also like, I think it's a good time to do this because much of the world is experiencing like extremes at the moment while we are filming this.
Yes, we're hoping we're not going to delay publication of this too long, but both Europe and the United States are currently gripped by a heat wave. Yeah, I don't flourish in the sunshine at all. My wardrobe is designed for colder weather. I'm much happier putting layers on than taking them off.
I'm satisfied in the sun, but I would like that sun to not get above like 80 degrees.
Well, whether you enjoy sweltering in the heat or snuggling up in the cold, we're getting down to the meat of some meteorological terms in this episode, all about weather. Meteorological. Really struggle with that word. What does it literally mean?
It means the study of things that are way up in the air.
Like, high things.
Yeah. This is a fun one too, because like a meteor is not what is studied in meteorology today, but that wasn't necessarily always the case if you look at these words like meteoron. This is also the people who have visited Greece will know that meteora is also a place where there are monasteries up on these beautiful gigantic rock formations. So it's places that are high up in the air. But in the 15th century English and prior, meteor could refer to any atmospheric phenomenon visible from the ground. That could also include meteors.
Right,
or shooting stars.
So it has in the past, it has meant the study of space as well as the study of just the stuff that's going on high up that is affecting what's going on down here. But it is, it's high. And so we talked about it in our space episode, so we won't go into it too far. But you've got meteors, which are, these days, they're delineated, aren't they? A meteor is sort of something from space that comes in through the Earth's atmosphere when you see it because it's bright. When it hits the ground, it's a meteorite. Mm-hmm. Then you've got a meteoroid, which is what it is before it enters the atmosphere.
In early forms of meteorology, there were different kinds of meteors. Aerial meteors, this is kind of like elemental takes on science, but aerial meteors included tornadoes and other windstorms. Aqueous meteors included water-based atmospheric phenomena like rain, snow, hail, dew, frost, clouds. And then luminous meteors were auroras, rainbows, things that looked like light in the sky. And igneous meteors were fiery-looking things like lightning and shooting stars.
Wonderful. And you mentioned all manner of weather phenomena there. We will get into the origins of those words too. But we should also mention the word weather itself. Weather is one of those really old English words, right? If a word can be old, it's in Old English. The Anglo-Saxons are using the word weather, right, which is basically the same but with a D. We changed the D to a th sometime in about the 15th century. But as far back as you can trace the English language, you get something that sounds a bit like weather.
I read that it was theorized, or it has been theorized, that switch to the sound is even perhaps earlier before the spelling reflects it too. A similar thing I think happened with the word father, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, that would make sense. Yeah, it's fader, isn't it? Yeah. So that's an interesting little thread that I'd like to pull on Words Unravelled. And that is Anglo-Saxon words for weather. Just briefly, the words that are in Anglo-Saxon that are very similar to our words today do show us a lot about the history of the people that eventually would be speaking the English language, but were speaking the languages before. And, way back thousands of years. I think this is really interesting because the words that were still in our language, or the languages that became English all that time ago, must tell us what weather the people were experiencing and tell us about the climate that they were living in. The theory is that people speaking Proto-Indo-European are living somewhere around sort of the Black Sea. And the climate you're going to get around there is sort of wet words.
Wet.
Yeah, and sometimes windy, but also
Mhm.
sometimes very dry as well. So you can see words in Old English, for example, like rain hasn't changed that much. It was Regen, but with a G in it, but that pretty quickly becomes a sort of rain sound. Snow is in Old English, sun, wind, drought, storm, cloud. All of these words have not changed very much since the Anglo-Saxons were talking about the weather they were experiencing, and presumably the people back over on mainland Europe before the Anglo-Saxons came over to Britain were experiencing as well.
In Old English too, weather meant air, sky, storm, or breeze. It was more windy types of words, and that's also like what the root means. So it's also the root of the word wind and the word vent and things like that.
Yeah, there's a word in German still that is Gewitter, right? And the Witter at the end of that is related to our word weather. And the G at the front of it, this thing existed in Old English too, where you put G before something to just kind of turn it into a sort of a noun, an expression of that thing. So Gewitter is another word for weather. And an Old English word for bad weather was Ungewitter, which means unweather. But
I love it.
but you're just using un to mean bad.
On weather. That's
Yeah, and I
amazing.
think in German you can have Ungewitter as well.
Which is also a little counterintuitive because like the Indo-European root here means wind, so unweather would imply like no wind.
Yeah, exactly. But they're just actually trying to augment the badness of the situation.
Wind. And then in Latin and Greek, a lot of words for, not a lot of words, the words for weather were time-based, right? Tempestus comes from tempest and time, and then Greek had a few different words for that implied weather, but one of them was kairos, which is seasonal time or weather.
But it is interesting that our words temperature and tempest, they are related. And that's because in Latin you have this multi-purpose tempus word that can mean weather and also time. And those concepts kind of do come together in the idea of, you know, the changing of
Seasonality, right?
and seasonality. Yeah, there we go. Seasonality, that's a good word for it.
I believe the let's see, Irish, Polish, and Serbo-Croatian also have time-based words for weather.
So should we talk about some more up-to-date weather words than the Anglo-Saxon, ancient Greek and Latin that we've been talking about?
Let's do it.
So I think I need to point out that in England, in Britain, we have an awful lot of words for rain. Like before, we talked about us having an awful lot of words for being drunk, but we have a similarly large number of words for rain.
Different types of rain, one might say.
Different types
Precipitation
of
of
rain.
various kinds.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, you can have mizzle, which is sort of, I know, it's almost like a sort of misty rain. And then you've got loads of other words that are sort of regional. For example, you can have dibble, which is used in Shropshire. You can have drizzle, mizzle, hempel, henting, hossin, which is a Cumbrian word, pouring, pelting, plothering, slattering, softish, which is a nice northern English word. There's a quote from 1894: "We've had nubbut softish weather all the week." There you go. I didn't get the accent quite right at the start, but I more or less got it by the end. And there's a really good Scottish dialect word as well, which is feechy, which means when the weather is
Ooh.
feechy. It means it's kind of gross, but it also means
Yeah, I was going to say
it's
that
raining.
sounds icky.
Yeah,
but,
it is great.
Rain can be a little gross sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. But in Scotland, they have a lot of really good words that just sort of they just sound like what they mean, and feechy is definitely one of those. And then of course in the opposite end of Britain, down in London, they have the term Duke of Spain, meaning rain, which is of course
Right.
Cockney rhyming slang.
Excellent. Very nice.
But I did come across, while doing the research for this, another nice word for rainy that we don't use very much anymore, but I would like to hear us using a bit more, and that is pluvious.
Pluvious.
So England is a very pluvious country, and you can see that comes from the French word for rain, which is to rain is pleuvoir.
This is reminding me of a related word. I've heard like pluvial before too, I think, which means something similar.
That's nice.
Have you ever thought through the different meanings of the word precipitation in general?
No.
So like
I feel like I should have now.
not necessarily. I mean, you obviously gave it a lot of thought just then.
I was thinking about all the different thoughts that were precipitating through my mind.
Oh, there you go. There you go. But like,
yeah.
okay, so we have like three main meanings. We have precipitate means to fall or happen suddenly, to throw violently, or to bring something about. Precipitous means things like abrupt or sudden or sheer or steep, like precipitous ledges and occurrences. And then we also have like rain. It means rain. The root of all of these words is head, which is like that makes your head hurt a little. The Latin components give it the literal meaning of something that happens or falls head first, implying charging like headlong into something. So it describes sudden, decisive, headlong action or literal falling in some sort of unstoppable way. And oddly enough,
Right.
the meteorological sense is one of the most recent definitions of the term, like late 17th century, whereas everything else dates back to the 15th century.
I like this idea. So rain is water that's sort of falling headlong towards you. So you got the pre, which is the in front, and the sipit bit is that the sort of
That's the
caput
head.
from the head from Latin. Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. That's created a lovely new picture in my mind as well.
Another thing that led to that like mental image and the frequent usage of it is some of the earliest references in English are about acts of God, like sending things down to earth during creation and the casting down of evil angels from heaven. In particular, the precipitation of the fiends is found in early works. So you'll see it describing downward growth too, like so like rain is like an act of God, but then you'll also see it in writings about like roots growing down into the earth, or even like there are very early references to like prolapsed uteruses, just like
Precipitated uterus.
yeah, basically. But I also like that when we use precipitate as a word for say like starting a fight, precipitating violence, it literally means like to throw down.
Oh, nice.
Or like to go head first into something.
Oh, that's very good. That's another excellent case of where the etymology really helps you out with the meaning of something.
It does. And like that one's like on their face, they don't feel like they have much in common, but they unite
There we go.
and come to a head together.
Can I talk about one of the more extreme examples of precipitation, which is the monsoon?
Ooh, yeah.
Because it's an unusual looking word, isn't it? And there's a reason it's unusual. It's because it's just a total mess, right? It is an Arabic word that has gone through like 3 different European filters and come out as monsoon. So the Arabic word is morsim, which means season. Nothing more complicated than that. But the Portuguese get hold of it and they turn it into morsal. And the Dutch have a version of it, which is monson. And those two merged together bring about this English word, monsoon, which means massive flipping rainstorm. Yeah.
This is the same. Well, it's similarly meshed up in the word typhoon too, right? Like we've got like the Greek typhon, which is the mythical father of monstrous storms. We've got an Arabic word meaning a deluge or a great storm, and then maybe like a Cantonese word meaning great wind.
Typhoon, right?
Exactly.
It's possible that those two words have influenced one another. We don't know, but this sort of bears out in the fact that we talk about typhoons as only really happening in the seas around China and around India. That's where those words were being used. Yeah.
The Arabic word appears in the Quran describing like the flood of Noah too.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
And then it was adopted by Persian and Hindi and Urdu speakers as well to describe these like cyclonic storms. Speaking of which, should we talk about cyclones?
Yeah.
When I was a kid, like that was like weekly for some summers, like go hide in the bathroom. This is a normal occurrence. We wait for the weather to go out. We come outside and our neighbor's house has no face anymore.
Wait, so to you, what is a cyclone?
I usually refer to a tornado as a cyclone.
But is that what everyone calls them? Because I think a cyclone to some people is equivalent to a hurricane or a typhoon, right? Just hurricane is an America's.
Oh, you're right. It looks like in many cases, cyclones are also simply hurricanes. Cyclone and tornado in my childhood were colloquially used interchangeably.
This bunch of words, between them, they're really fascinating. And it's interesting that you associate cyclone and tornado, because there's something similar going on with those two words, right? Cyclone is obviously you're thinking of something that is cyclical, that is spinning. And tornado, you think, it's something that is turning.
You would think so.
You would
kind
think
of.
so. Go on, tell us about it, Jess. This is a really good one.
So tornado appears in English by the early 1500s from the Spanish tronada, meaning thunderstorm, and tonare in Latin. The reshuffling of that O and R in English was probably from influence from the word tornar, meaning to twist. So we got this little metathesis here because they rotate, but they're named after thunder ultimately.
The key point here is the word tornado is not a Spanish word. We invent it based upon existing Spanish words, but it is not a Spanish word. But now it is a Spanish word because they've borrowed it from English.
The original Spanish word was a word for a thunderstorm, not a tornado.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get into thunder later. Let's stick with these big storms.
More Spanish shenanigans.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Yeah, so what I found interesting is that we used to call hurricanes or furicanos, which is kind of cute. And this is a word that's a little bit Spanish, a little bit Portuguese. Am I right?
Yes, but ultimately it's probably from an indigenous word.
Right. Yes. Okay, this is it. So that's right. So those early versions, I'm just remembering my own research here. So those early versions are our attempts to sort of write down the Spanish and Portuguese words, but actually the word we're using now much better reflects the Carib word that the Portuguese and the Spanish were trying to say. So yeah, what's the Carib word? It's huracan, which is very similar, which is why hurricanes happen around the Americas, typhoons happen in the sort of Indian Ocean and around China, and then cyclones, they have their source in the sort of South Pacific, in Oceania, that sort of space.
Before we move fully on from hurricane, you mentioned that it has variations like furican, right? And this is actually pretty frequent for Spanish to change F and H together.
Really?
Like related words to the Latin facere now start with an H in Spanish.
I'm just thinking about forno and horno. So forno is the Italian, I think, for an oven, and horno is Spanish for an oven.
Facienda and hacienda.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, sure. So one of the hacienda is where you make something, right? It's a factory.
Rather facienda and then hacienda.
Yeah, so but facienda and is related loosely to fabricate.
All of these words coming back to the Latin word for like making and doing.
Can I mention another windy word?
Yeah.
Do you know what wind is measured using? Do you know the name of the device?
I was going to say knots, but that's not what you're talking about. I thought
No. So not the measure, but what it's measured with. It's called an anemometer.
Anima meaning move, life or spirit or breath.
Yeah. Yes. So no, it's anemo.
Oh, damn.
But that no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. So it shares the same Latin root as anima, animus as well, but it's A-N-E-M-O, anemo, and it means wind, right? And it comes from a Greek word for wind. Did you know that an anemone, a sea anemone, is etymologically speaking a daughter of the wind?
That's lovely. I think I had come across that before, but I forgot.
But again, I think
and it's
so.
because
That is one
they
of
look all flowy. Yeah, for our podcast listeners, we are dancing like jellyfish.
Well, no, not one for the podcast listeners. They're actually probably better to not have to watch my hourglass figure sliding around. But I think anemone is one of the hardest words of the sea. So now I know that Anemo. Oh no, I thought I'd solved it. Anemo means wind.
Yes.
Anemone. Because people say anemone, they say anemone, but it's nice. Anemone.
When I hear anemone, I think sea anemone, but they're named after a plant, like a land plant, right? An anemone.
Yeah, there has to be if we put sea in front of it, there has to be. It's like an urchin.
Yeah, hedgehog.
Yeah, it's actually a hedgehog. Yeah, that would be a revelation to anyone who hasn't heard our animal words. It's a big one. Sea urchins are sea urchins because land urchins are hedgehogs.
Yes. And urchins, like child street urchins, are named after the notion that they're little rodents.
Oh, I didn't know that. Did we say that before? Oh,
I
that's cute.
think
Sort of
so.
scurrying around at night.
Uh,
Oh, that's sweet.
should we? I think we should move to south, hit some thunder, or rather, I
Ooh.
mean, maybe we should start with lightning because
Almost disappointing etymology for lightning is that it is just the word lightening. So it's a lightening of the sky. We've very cleverly dropped the E from the middle just to help us differentiate those two words, but it's exactly the same concept.
I swear to God, for a while I kept seeing people use the E in the middle of that word, and this stopped happening, which I'm happy for because you don't really pronounce it.
I still think it's pretty common for people to write lightening instead of lightning, but it's not unreasonable. I don't think it's unreasonable because it is what it is, right? It
Yeah.
is a lightening
In
of the sky.
Mhm.
There is an extra syllable in lightening versus lightning, but I think people probably do pronounce those two things the same. I remember when I was in the Everglades when I was a kid, and the weather was too bad for us to go out and look for alligators, and the person that was supposed to take us out kept saying, "You hear that? That is lightning." And I remember as a 9-year-old thinking, "No, it's not. That's thunder." I was right?
Right. And thunder, of course, it's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it literally means loud noise. It's
Big ol' boom.
related loosely to words like tone, right? If you go back far enough, it's got a common answer. Here's an interesting thing. So the Old English for thunder is thunor, which is also the Anglo-Saxon name for their god equivalent to Thor, right? So Thor is literally the embodiment of thunder, thunor, which means we've talked in the past about Thursday being named after, being Thunres Day in Old English, right? Being named after the god Thunre or Thunor, but it is actually perfectly legitimate to say that Thursday is Thunder's Day as well, because
Excellent.
these two things are one and the same.
Can I do some related words to these, like thematically and etymologically?
Jess, this is what we do. Yes, you can.
For thunder, one of my favorites is blunderbuss, which is from the Dutch donderbus, meaning thunder gun. And then obviously we have things like detonation, which literally means like to thunder down almost.
By the way, we should mention again that donder, right?
Yeah,
the Dutch word for
exactly.
thunder is donder and blitzen, as in the
thunder and lightning, the reindeer.
Yeah, the reindeer. Nowadays Donna, but originally donder and bliksem, because
Right.
now we've for some reason started using the. Well, there is a good reason, but it's a long story. Again, it's in our Christmas episode. Go watch that. We now have sort of a word inspired by the Dutch word for thunder, donder, and blitzen, which is the German word for lightning.
Look at us doing Christmas in July-ish.
Yeah, Christmas in a heat wave. Oh, it's like being an Australian.
Amazing. Another one for lightning, though, is this is not related except thematically, but the word fulminate means to explode or to express a vehement protest. And it is from the Latin fulmen, meaning lightning bolt.
Oh, wow.
I really like that. The word coruscate means to flash or sparkle, like the light was coruscating from the walls, and that's from Latin glitter or vibrate, and is often thematically connected to lightning. I guess that one's a little weaker, though.
Coruscate is one of those words that's used a lot by journalists who don't necessarily know what it means.
Thesaurus abuse.
Yes, it's used with excoriating, coruscating, all these different words. Yeah. There's another good Latin word for a downpour or a strong shower, nimbus.
Let's do that one.
Yeah,
I am excited
exactly.
to talk about this.
We've got our head in the clouds now. Yes, indeed. The nimbus clouds. Well, actually, I don't know. Is nimbus a type of cloud or is it a description of another type of cloud? Do you understand what I mean here?
I understand what you were saying, and I have a lot of information about different types of clouds.
Me too. Let's share.
Let's do it.
Should we start at the low level or at the top level and work our way down?
We should start with the word cloud, I think.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Which,
it's one of those old English ones, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't mean cloud. Like, it means like rock.
Yeah. It means a heap, right?
Yeah. In Old English, it meant like a massive rock or a hill or a craggy outcropping, and then it was extended to like the hill-shaped stuff in the sky.
Yeah, and we should not have that as our word for a cloud. It should not be. Our word for a cloud should be Wolken, which is related to the West Germanic words. In German, it's Wolken, means clouds. In Dutch, it's spelt the same as it is in German, but I think it's pronounced Wolke or something like that. You don't pronounce the N at the end. We should be calling clouds Wolken, but we don't. We call them clouds. We've named them after, a sort of rocky.
You'll also catch welkin in Shakespeare, right?
You do, yes.
Make the welkin ring, and welkin here meaning the firmament or the heavens.
Exactly. So welkin is a developed. So Wolken in Old English is Wolcen, and then you get this more poetic version, welkin, that is being used into the 19th century in a poetic sense to mean the heavens. Actually, really nice. I really like that word, welkin.
Yeah.
Speaking of words for cloud that mean a heap or a pile or something, that's what cumulus means, which is one of the lowest levels of cloud. Fluffy cloud.
Yes.
Cumulus.
All
cloud.
Of these, we got all these words: cirrus, cumulus, stratus, and nimbus, and these are all named by British. I read amateur meteorologist Luke Howard in 1802. I don't know the degree to which he was an amateur. I should.
Well, I don't know how
him.
You are a professional one in those days. They didn't have weather forecasts.
I mean, I don't know. We were in scientific modernity at that point. I feel like something counts there. Anyway,
I think he's earned his crust by now.
We also have like hybrid forms of these, right? So we have cirrostratus, which, by the way, cirrus, it means curl of hair in Latin. So spready curls of hair for cirrostratus. And then cirrocumulus is like a heap of curls, and altostratus is high up, like a high up spread of clouds. Altocumulus is a high up heap of clouds. Stratocumulus is a spready heap, and then cumulonimbus is a heap of clouds.
Yeah. The way I've always remembered it is if you see sort of streaky, sort of stripy, sheety thing, and it looks kind of straight, then there's stratus clouds or a variety of stratus cloud. And then the cumulus, yes, actually related to the word cumulation directly, right? And that's the sort of fluffy ones. But I was talking about nimbus being this Latin word for a downpour. So if you see nimbus in one of the names of a cloud, it means it's a rain cloud. So you have cumulonimbus, which is a really big, sort of tall, stormy cloud. If you ever fly above one, it's absolutely terrifying. You can see the lightning sometimes flashing around it. But you can also have nimbostratus, which is a sort of thick overall cloud cover that usually means rain. You can't see the sun through it.
Interesting. And I feel like that happens a lot, not in your neck of the woods, but where you used to live.
Yeah.
That perpetual.
We do have a lot of rain there.
So let's talk about words for extremely cold rain or snow.
Can we talk about this whole thing about certain cultures having dozens and dozens of different words for snow?
Yes. In the Arctic regions, indigenous languages, of which there are many, have a very rich vocabulary for the world of ice and snow. Sometimes you'll see it simplified. They'll say that like Inuit people have X number of words for snow. The truth is there are language families that do have hundreds of words for snow, but like individual ones have different words for snow. But there are some really interesting ones too. And it makes sense that, if we have as many words for rain in British English, we should have any place where snow is a fact of life most of the year would also have many words for the different types and the way you interact with them.
And it's the specificity of all of these words that means you can end up having so many of them. I mean, there are words for, snow that you sink into, for example. Or, obviously it makes sense to have a word for freshly fallen snow because it has a completely different consistency and you have to approach it in a different way. So it's not peculiar to have different words. I don't know why I'm sounding so angry about about this, like because people do say, oh, it's amazing that they've got all these different words. And well, is it not just obviously they need lots of different words for this stuff if you're going to accurately describe, if you're going to tell someone, right, if you're going to go to the shops today, you need to know that there is the sort of snow that you're going to sink into just in front of the front door.
This is why, I mean, I think both can be true. I think it can be magical and wonderful that this happened, and it can be pragmatic, much like my favorite Terry Pratchett quote, It doesn't stop being magic just because you know how it works.
It is lovely. I mean, let us celebrate the
Yes.
diversity within this language and the specificity of these words. It is lovely. The fact that I have to say snow that you might sink into is clearly inferior to just having one word for it.
Over the last winter, we had a snow that fell, and then the top of the snow turned into like a thick ice sheet. So like my dogs went out and started just like sliding across the hill, and like I had to go and like stomp through the snow to make a path for them to do their business and whatnot. Then it happened again and again and again, and it kept getting, that top layer of ice kept getting thicker and thicker, and I'd have to use like a tool. And I want to know, like, was that two different types of snow, or was this like a progression of a singular type?
Yeah, if you do know of a word that describes Jess's specific snow,
It was awful though. Like,
yeah, I know. I mean, really, when snow turns to ice, does it get any worse? You have that initial excitement of the snow very quickly, depending on what the weather does over the next few hours, can turn to just a nightmare.
I'm also just like woefully inept in my physical embodiment of myself, so I fell down a lot.
I moved from Britain, where we don't have an awful lot of heavy snow, to Berlin, where in the winter is common that you do, right? Continental Europe has much more extreme weather than Britain does. Britain just has sort of, it's just sort of wavering around this sort of middle point. It's raining, sure. In the summer it's raining. When it gets hot, it never gets as hot as it does here. Although again, recently it's been pretty hot. But I've been completely lost in the snow. I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know how to handle it. It's embarrassing. I'm never well dressed. Everyone says, "What? That is not a coat for wearing in the snow, Rob. You're dressed like like one of the presenters of Top Gear."
What we're learning is that you are a creature of temperate climes.
I am. Yeah, I'm better off in the rain than in the snow. That is for sure.
We're not totally bereft of words for snow and ice, and we have a couple of really interesting ones that I think are cool because they come up poetically, at least. And one of them is rime, which is a white crystalline frost that forms when water vapor freezes on cold surfaces. And I think that kind of speaks to the seafaring nature of many of our ancestors too, because rime tends to be affiliated with like the rime of the ancient mariner. And
wait, hold on. So is the rime they're talking about in the title of that, is it ice, not the fact that it's a poem?
I mean, that is what we call a double entendre right there. But no, the rime of the ancient mariner is spelled R-I-M-E, not R-H-Y-M-E. And they're referring to the frost.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Why did that not come up when I studied it?
I don't know. I feel like that's the first thing we learned.
Insanity. Maybe I might have been asleep during that bit. To be fair. I wasn't during a lot of my lectures.
I definitely appreciated that story more later in life. Like in high school, I was like, ugh, I don't care about the albatross. But now I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool.
I can't believe that, because they did spell rhyme as in like poem, R-I-M-E, in English as well, right? It's just a pun.
It's about a terrible, frosty, rainy, wet sea voyage. Anyway, we also have hoarfrost, which sounds slutty but isn't.
The sluttiest weather.
It means, I actually really like the origin of this one. This type of hoar means gray-haired. It looks like gray hair that has collected on top of grass and things and branches.
We use the word hoary to describe someone with a big sort of grey beard. Gandalf is hoary.
It has that like feathery frost and things like that. So yeah, we've got a few little words for ice and snow.
Something, there was a revelation for me, just an aside, while researching this. I found out where the term raincheck comes from, which is very American. If anyone ever says, "I'll take a rain check" in English, they have to put on an American accent to say it. But I didn't know before researching this what a rain check actually was. Is it broadly understood in America where that term comes from?
Well, tell me, because I think I know, but maybe you're about to surprise me.
But it's a ticket that you're given at a baseball game if it gets called off because of the weather, and it entitles you to come back another day.
So I assumed it was more broad than that, but like any kind of outdoor event.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be a baseball game. No.
But no, look, I am seeing that it, like you said, originally described rain out baseball games. Huh. I knew some of that, but I did not know that it was specifically baseball. It also makes perfect sense that it would be baseball. That just happens a lot around here.
Yeah, I think the confusion for me comes from the spelling of the word check, right? It's a sort of, it's a slip that we would spell in English, CHEQ, sorry, that we would spell in British English. Oh, my, that English arrogance coming through. CHEQUE, not CHECK. So I don't know. I suppose I thought they were going to check whether there was rain and get back to you. I have no idea. Anyway, that was a revelation for me, and I hope it's a revelation for someone else too.
You should watch our games episode because we go into detail about the different spellings and the origins of the word check and its relation to chess and checkers and everything else.
I think, to quote you, every reference to a check is a reference to chess.
Every single type of check is from the game of chess. It's fun.
Including a rain check.
Indeed.
I've got a couple of slangy weather terms to just briefly mention. Have you heard of brass monkeys?
I have heard of brass monkeys. I think my first initiation to this term was probably via the Beastie Boys, but I am familiar with other references to it as well. Still tell me, because I feel like there's more to the story than I know.
Well, if you say, the weather it's brass monkeys outside, it means it's really, really cold. But I want to do a bit of a brass monkey debunky here, because there is a theory behind why that is, almost certainly false. So it's short for cold enough to freeze the balls off a brass monkey, right? And people don't want to accept that that might just mean a brass monkey's testicles, right? Which is what it does.
Like that's
probably
what
mean.
Like we say cold as balls over here. Like that's
really?
Yeah.
Cold as balls.
I mean, at least I have said such things. Maybe I am. I mean, I feel like as balls is also.
You've said it.
Listen, as balls is a thing that you can tack on to basically anything to cause it to intensify, at least among millennial slang. In this part of the world.
Brass monkeys is not suggesting that balls are cold. Testicles are cold.
It is an extrapolated sense of the same thing. Cold enough to freeze your balls off, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And brass is it can withstand even colder temperatures. So if the balls are falling off your brass monkey, then it must be really cold. No, but the theory I wanted to debunk is the idea that a brass monkey was a contraption for storing cannonballs, and if it got really cold, it would contract and the balls would fall out.
No.
Yeah, this is a theory you will absolutely find no evidence for it whatsoever that there was such thing as a brass monkey, and unfortunately this, sometimes with idioms, and we get into this in our idioms episode all the time, people have just gone so far out of their way to come up with an explanation beyond the obvious, and this is one of those. And as satisfying as that theory is, it's horse poo.
Well, okay, so why is the monkey brass? Do you know?
Well, yeah, because it was quite common for people to buy, the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil,
okay.
to buy, brass models of those on trips to the Orient, for example, places like that. People would come
little
back with brass monkeys.
Too were monkey shaped.
People had brass monkeys. They were a thing.
Trendy.
And the other one I wanted to mention was a pea super, which is a term we like to use in England.
What the hell does that mean?
Yeah. So it means incredibly dense fog, or more specifically smog, which is, smoky fog, the term that's used to describe the fog that descends on industrial towns. And before the Clean Air Act that made London's air cleaner, although it's still pretty
green?
dirty. It wasn't green, but it was thick like a pea soup. So we'll talk about a pea soup. But you might still talk about a really, really foggy day in England as a pea super, but less since they cleared the smog.
I think that we should mention before we go a couple of words that maybe not everyday weather words, but I think that people will affiliate weather with these words. And one of them I think is everybody's favorite word for some reason that I have particular beef with. I don't have beef with it. I don't feel that strongly about it.
You don't need to tell me what this word is because you've talked about it before and I know what it's going to be.
Yeah, it's petrichor. And my thing is everybody's I do love the smell. Walking out into a dense, beautiful, rainy day, it smells wonderful. It's intoxicating. It's delightful. And it means beautifully rock plus the ethereal fluid that flowed in the veins of the gods. My beef is that if this were a word for something gross, no one would think that word was pretty. Like if petrichor it's rock snot, it means rock snot. Like and if it were a word for like goo or a slime mold that grew on rocks, which would also make perfect sense, then no one would think that word was pretty.
Yeah, I mean, it is very difficult to divorce a word from its meaning. I recently did a video about the ugliest and prettiest words in the English language, which everyone should watch over on Rob Word's YouTube channel,
It's a good video, but I fundamentally disagree with the conclusions. Not yours, the ones
yeah,
of the
that's
study.
the thing. People really struggle to separate meaning from
from
the words, from the sounds.
I think the prettier word for the thing that causes petrichor is actually
I don't feel like we've quite described what petrichor is.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, exactly what it is. I know it's a nice smell after rain, but is it the rain that's kind of given off by the tarmac or the
this is what I'm getting at, is the thing that causes petrichor, which is the smell, the way it smells when it rains outside. It is caused by a geosmin. I think that's a cooler word to some degree, and maybe not less mythological, but it's a bacterial compound released from soil into the air by the force of rain hitting porous, dry earth, which is why like a fresh rain smells better than it's already been raining for days, you know?
Geosmin was the word.
Yeah, I believe so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that one more. Okay, from petrichor. Although I understand why people like petrichor. It's one of those ones. Oh, there's a word for that. Unless you're into words, people don't know the word petrichor.
Another one that I do really like, I think is a great word, is spindrift. Ooh. It's weather and ocean related, is the wind-blown spray from cresting wave tops during high winds and gales. So, ocean rain that smacks you in the face. But I love that word. I feel like it's fun.
Spindrift. Yeah, It's fun.
One of my favorite wines is also called Spindrift.
Oh, do you think that might be why you like the word?
No, because I liked the word before I tried the wine.
Did you buy the wine because the word was on the bottle?
Yes. Yes, I did. I buy wines.
It's as good a reason as any.
I buy wines, and not because I know anything about them, but because they have owls on them and because they have cool words on them.
I used to work on the wine and spirits section of a supermarket, and they had a wine that was just called white wine, and it had a picture of a scooter on it. And I thought, who is going to buy this? Sure enough, one day, guy just picks up a bottle and takes it to the till. So
there's a brand around here called Good Wine, and I've absolutely bought it. I didn't agree with the assessment on the bottle, but I like the bottle. I like the name on it.
This is the second time in a couple of episodes where we have diverted onto talking about booze when we should have been talking about something else. I feel it might be a good time to draw.
Yeah, maybe we go,
to a close.
Part ways and toast to something else.
Enjoy the calm after the storm. Thank you very much for watching another episode of Words Unravelled. If you enjoy what we do here, by the way, another mention that we have a membership scheme here on YouTube. If you click the word join underneath this video, there's a button that says join. You can choose from various tiers with various perks, and we'd love to have you on board.
Yeah, we have some fun things planned for our members too. So we would love to chat further with you.
Take care.
We'll see you next time on Words Unravelled.